Okay, let's start from where we left off. May, June 2017, variant 5.1, question number 1, part A. We have to draw a label diagram of the experimental setup that the student could have used to produce the graph shown. And the two things that we need to keep in mind are the fact that which apparatus is being used, and the apparatus that we need, it should measure these two variables. Okay, so the thing is, we need to first figure out which two variables this question is talking about. So obviously we know that the graphs that we have in paper 5, they are between two variables, right? One is the independent variable, which is on the x-axis. This is the independent variable. So the independent variable on the x-axis is basically change in the independent variable will affect the variable on the y-axis, or the dependent variable. So independent variable we have on x-axis, okay, and the dependent variable we have on y-axis. So this is variable number 1, this is variable number 2, okay. So basically the independent variable on the x-axis, as it changes, the dependent variable on the y-axis is going to change as well. So the variable on the y-axis is dependent on the variable on the x-axis, and change in the variable on x-axis is going to result in change of the variable along the y-axis. So to figure out these two variables, we're just going to look at the graph, because they have already provided us the variables on the graph. The variables that they use to make this graph are this one. The one on x-axis, time. So the two variables. The two variables. Number 1, number 2. So these two variables, one of them we get to know from the x-axis, which is time. One variable is time, and the second variable we get to know from the y-axis, from looking at the y-axis, it's temperature. Okay, so they say that label the apparatus required to measure the two variables. So we're done with this part because we have figured out both of the variables. Now we need to see which apparatus we can use to measure these variables, right? So time, for time you can have any timing device. Like for example, you can have a stopwatch. So when you start it, you can see, okay, the stopwatch starts, and you can see, okay, the first second has passed, the second second has passed, the third second has passed, now the fourth second has passed, and you know, every time each second is passed, you can take the readings for the temperature accordingly. And for temperature, obviously we're going to have we're going to need a thermometer. So now we're done with this question. This part A is of 2 marks. Okay, and we're done with 2 things. We have figured out the 2 variables, and we have also figured out the apparatus that we're going to need it. So now we're going to draw our label diagram. Okay. So there are 2 marks for this question. 1 mark is for labeling a timing device and a thermometer, which should be in contact with the liquid, because obviously that's the point that it's going to be able to take the readings accurately. There is 1 mark for timing device and thermometer touching the liquid, and the second is for labeled insulation of the liquid, okay, whatever that we're measuring, so that the insulation will prevent heat loss, and then you'll have more accurate readings for your temperature. Okay, so 1 mark is for the insulation thingy, and the second mark is for timing device and thermometer. So we're going to do this. You can use any timing device, but the one that I used was a stopwatch. So actually my drawing is quite horrible, so this is a stopwatch. You can start it and it will start counting the seconds. You can show your insulation in any manner. So I'm going to show that this is the insulation. Okay. And then you can call this thing a beaker. And inside this you can have your heat bag, and you can have a small kind of opening in it. Okay, I know my thermometer looks weird. This is your heat bag. Actually, I think a better idea would be to not have this in a beaker, because obviously first you'll need to take the readings for the room temperature, then you need to apply pressure on this heat bag so that the smaller bag containing the calcium chloride ruptures and the reaction starts. So you can't apply pressure. Actually, at least I don't think that it's possible to do that if you have a glass beaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this glass beaker. Okay. You can just, I'm too lazy to redraw the crosses for indicating insulation all over again, so you can just make them more closer. Okay, so we have the heat pack, which is containing the liquid. Actually, that doesn't feels right. Okay, so this is our heat pack surrounded by insulation. Our heat pack surrounded by insulation along with its thermometer. Okay, I'm not really sure how to draw this calibration, but you can show something like this as well. And then you can label this as your thermal So now this question was of how many marks? 2 marks. So we identified the variable time and its respective apparatus, a timing device, and we have also identified the variable of temperature and its respective apparatus of a thermometer, and so we have 1 mark. And then we showed insulation around our heat pack or the container which has the calcium chloride along with water. So we have both marks. So we're done with part A. So this is the diagram, the labeled diagram. This is the, everything below this pink line is the actual solution for question number 1, part A. Everything below the pink line is the actual solution, and above it is, you know, the explanation or the working or your thinking and all. So we're done with part A. So in the next video we're going to see the next parts. We're going to solve them as well.